Good evening. Thank you for coming to tonight's meeting of the Amherst Zoning Board of Appeals. Today's date is Tuesday, November 19th, 2024. We will start tonight's meeting with the Pledge of Allegiance. Please stand. Pledge allegiance to the flag, United States of America, to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. In the event of a fire or other emergency, please follow the exit signs that are provided in this room and throughout Town Hall. Upon exiting the room, the main exits are located to the front and the rear of the building. Do not use the elevator during an emergency event. This meeting is being live streamed and recorded through the Town of Amherst YouTube channel. Will the deputy clerk please call the roll? Present.
Here.
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 Thank you. And also with us here tonight is the zoning enforcement officer, Danny Latowski, and the deputy town attorney, Nora Robshaw. We'll get started on tonight's agenda. Could I get a motion for approval of the minutes?
So moved.
Second.
That was motion by member Schubert, second by member Phillips. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes 5-0. We're going to take the fifth item out of order tonight. Will the petitioner please come to the microphone? When speaking in tonight's meeting, please make sure your name and address is written on the sheet of paper on the podium and state that in the microphone when you speak.
Yes, good evening, Chairman and members of the Zoning Board of Appeals. Sean Hopkins on behalf of the applicant, RAS Development, LLC. Go next slide. So this is a site that you've already had numerous hearings on, going, I believe, all the way back to May. The project site is approximately 2.06 acres in size. It is zoned MFR5, and there is an existing curb cut onto Sheridan Drive. And you can see it there highlighted in yellow. Next slide. Copy of the zoning map. So this parcel and the adjacent parcel to the west are both zoned MFR5, and that was pursuant to a town board decision about 8 years ago. Next slide. Project timeline, I just want to indicate again, this has been subject to an extensive review process. Probably the most important point there is on September 17th, you did issue a negative declaration pursuant to seeker and granted 4 requested area variances. Unfortunately for us, immediately after, we became aware of a zoning condition from 2016 that required a front yard building setback of 115 feet. So we did file an amended or new variance application on September 19th. You held hearings on October 16th and November 19th, and of course the hearing remains open. Next slide. Since that time, on November 4th, one of the neighbors has commenced an Article 78 proceeding challenging the decisions you issued on September 17th. I plan on working with the town attorney's office closely to address the allegations. But most importantly, I want to note that they have not asked for any injunctive relief, meaning it's not a stay against any further proceedings by the ZBA. Nonetheless, we will take a careful look at that, and we plan on responding appropriately. And I believe, from my perspective, I'm confident ultimately we will prevail. Next slide. Project modification. So again, based on the need to comply with that 115-foot setback, the left is the plan that you actually saw during your September meeting. The right is the plan you saw during your meetings on October 16th and November. And basically what we did with respect to building 1, side yard setback from the easterly property line was at 39.41 feet, or is now 39.41 feet versus previously approved 48.51 feet, which is here. You'll also notice that we moved building 2 back further from Sheridan Drive based on that 115-foot requirement. There's actually some benefits to that. Provides more green space along Sheridan Drive, which is a visible portion of the site. Also, clearly, to the extent anyone had any remaining concerns about site distance, takes care of that as well. Next slide. We spent a lot of time in terms of the conceptual elevations. The original plan we provided was not viewed favorably by the Zoning Board of Appeals. This, of course, reflects the current plan in terms of the front facade. And you can see an effort's been made to provide different materials, different colors, stone base, residential style roof, et cetera, et cetera. Next slide. The cost of those upgrades is approximately $250,000. We also added covered building entrances, higher quality balconies, et cetera, et cetera. Again, all of that in the future will be reviewed by the planning board in connection with the site plan application. Next slide. I also want to note for the record that one of the variances you granted on September 17th is no longer needed, which was the front yard building setback for building number 2. Originally, that was at 26.02 feet. As I indicated, we have to move that back to 115 feet from the center line of Sheridan Drive, which is 65 feet from the edge of the right-of-way. So that variance is no longer needed. And I believe at last meeting, I indicated we'd be withdrawing that variance if the variance that we're asking this evening is ultimately granted. Next slide. Just a copy of the resolution you adopted on September 17th. Again, you issued a negative declaration and approved the variances subject to 2 conditions. Next slide. The 2 conditions were as follows: that we, in terms of the architecture of the building, has to be consistent with that elevation plan that we prepared. And that, second of all, we'll install a 6-foot tall privacy fence and landscaping along the western edge of the project site, consistent with a plan that was generated by Carmina Wood Design, dated July 29th. We're aware of these conditions. We'll comply with these conditions as the project review process moves forward. Next slide. That's just showing those changes, again, in terms of the variances. Side yard setback on the east side of building 1, 39.41 feet versus 48.87 feet required. And that's based on a mean building height of 32.58 feet. So that's right here. Again, it's building 1. I think I may have pointed to building 2 earlier. And you can see we moved the other building further back from Sheridan Drive, so it complies with both the front yard setback requirement of 65 feet and 115 feet from the center line of Sheridan. Next slide. Obviously, this is governed by the balancing test and the 5 criteria. I think within our most recently filed application, we've addressed this in great detail. It requires you to balance the benefits that the applicant will receive and weigh those against any resulting detriments to the health, safety, and welfare of the neighborhood, which we do not believe there are any. In terms of criteria 1, whether there'll be an undesirable change in the character of the neighborhood or a detriment to nearby properties, the answer is no. The project density remains the same, 24 units with 38 bedrooms. As you recall, we could have the same density by mixing the bedrooms differently. There was a lot of discussion about that during the public hearings this summer. We've upgraded the architecture. And then finally, per your condition, we're providing extensive landscaping and a fence along the western portion of the project site, which is the portion where the petitioner commenced the Article 78 proceeding. Next slide. Whether benefits can be achieved by some other method feasible for us to pursue that would allow us to receive the benefits? No. Again, the current layout reflects input from many parties, including National Grid. National Grid, early on in the process, advised us that buildings need to be 10 feet from their existing easement on the portion of the project site. Whether it's substantial, no. The key inquiry there is whether there's any harm, whether the proposed variance will have an adverse effect or impact on the physical or environmental conditions of the neighborhood. The answer to that, again, is no. You've already issued a negative declaration previously. You've received numerous reports and studies prepared by professional experts. There's no adverse impacts on Ellicott Creek. And the only thing we're doing based on the new plan is we have an impact of 1/10 of 1 acre in the regulated floodplain on the back portion of the site. And then finally, criteria 5, which cannot be the sole basis for your decision making. I think we accept the fact that it's an alleged difficulty, given the fact that we have knowledge of the fact that it has been zoned MFR5 for approximately the last 8 years. Next. I'm not going to talk about seeker except to mention new things. Number 1, we have submitted a letter from Pat Sheedy, basically addressing stormwater management, which was a question that came up. Next slide. That's a site plan showing that minor impact to the regulated 100-year floodplain. Within the lawsuit, there's an allegation that this will have adverse impacts on Ellicott Creek itself and the regulated floodway. You can see absolutely that is not the case. We're leaving both of those protected areas alone in their entirety, and we'll have that permanent green space on the back. Next slide. We did also provide a technical letter in response to concerns that were raised by the petitioner relative to traffic impacts. Our professional traffic engineer from Passero Associates, number one, confirmed it was her professional opinion that a traffic study is not needed. She confirmed that the existing site distances at the curb cut onto Sheridan exceed appropriate standards, and finally concluded that the project will not result in any potentially significant adverse traffic impacts. Next slide. Next slide. So as many of you may recall, we had to do an archaeological report. That archaeological report was reviewed by the New York State Office of Parks, Recreation, and Historic Preservation, and they issued 2 correspondences on August 12th that you've previously seen. However, we had to go back to the drawing board because now we pushed the one building further south in an area that was not tested previously. Next slide. So what we did is on November 15th, we had a Phase 1B addendum prepared that was based on 12 additional shovel areas here. Again, the footprint where the building's been extended. That report was submitted to SHPO. It did contain the professional opinion of our archaeologists that no further work is warranted. Next slide. And then yesterday on November 18th, SHPO issued a letter stating it had no concerns about archaeological or cultural resources. Next slide. And then issued a second letter today that we just received, basically stating they had no concerns relative to potential impacts on historic resources. Keep in mind the Park Country Club, which is 2 parcels to the east, is eligible for listing on the state and National Register of Historic Places. Next slide. One of the concerns they also raised was about additional landscaping within the Niagara Mohawk easement and right-of-way, and SHPO's review included that. Early on in this process, we talked to National Grid. Again, they said buildings got to be 10 feet outside their easement area, but they would allow landscaping. So I want to confirm again, we fully intend to plant that landscaping as has been consented to by National Grid. That is not their property, it is their easement. It will not interfere with the power lines that are located on their parcel. Next slide. Rob prepared this slide just to show the distance between our project site, including that National Grid easement area, and the Park Country Club, which is located again to the east. In between, there's that Castlebrook parcel, and that distance is 425 feet. So it's difficult to imagine how this project will have any impact, again, on that resource that may be eligible for state or national listing. And all of that vegetation on Castlebrook, as far as we know, will remain, and we'll be enhancing what's there today by providing landscaping within the National Grid easement area on the east side of the site. Next slide. That's that stormwater letter we prepared, basically confirming our stormwater management system will comply with the stringent stormwater quality and quantity standards, including the need to handle a 100-year storm event. Next slide. All we're asking you to do is we're not asking for a decision this evening. So there were some additional discussions today, given that there is some new evidence, primarily those new SHPO determinations and the updated archaeological report. What we're simply asking you to do is keep the public hearing open until your January meeting. You do not meet in December. And then, of course, if you have any questions about where we are versus where we were at when we started this process, do feel free to ask. Thank you.
Thank you. Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant? All right, no questions. Is any member of the public present to speak on this item?
Good evening. My name is Colin Noor. I represent Mark DeJory, who lives adjacent to this property. We wanted to bring 2 things to the board's attention tonight. First, based on this substantial change to the site plan, we would ask that the board rescind its prior decision on seeker and the grant of the variances and readdress those based on the new drawings. Second, and most importantly, we want to refer the board to 104-3 of the Amherst Code. Under that provision, in addition to those items listed in the seeker regulations as type 1, any action that will affect a floodplain or within 100 feet of a bank of a flowing water course is likely to have an environmental impact. Based on the new drawings, which do not provide a measurement of the distance from Building 1 to the creek, but which provide a scale and other measurements, it does appear that Building 1 will be less than 100 feet from the bank of Ellicott Creek. Therefore, as a matter of law, likely to have an environmental impact. The board cannot issue a negative declaration for this project and must require an EIS. If the board has any questions, happy to answer them, but those were just points that we want to bring to your attention tonight.
Could you just explain a little bit more how this constitutes a substantial change to the site plan?
It's a fairly significant change of the locations of the building, and the most important change is, as I said, it brings Building 1 within 100 feet of the creek, which significantly impacts the board's determination under seeker, as well as the potential change in the sight line from the historic resources, as was noted by Mr. Hopkins in the updated letter that we've not had a chance to review from SHPO.
Any other member of the public here to speak on this item?
Mark DeJory, I'm the property owner to the west of the project. If we could bring up the slide of the side-by-side from the old to the new one, please.
It's back. There it is.
Okay, and the one on the left, it's hard to see from where you are, but that's my house. And the front of the building was right at my back patio and my living space. So the front of the building, they had mentioned that they were going to put up a fence, 6-foot fence and some greenery. The building's going to be 25 feet plus. So the second floor on the old building was looking into my living space. Now, if you look at the right side, the building coming back, that second floor and probably the first floor is going to be looking at all of my living space towards the back of the house. So I think that's a significant impact on us for our privacy, especially seeing that it's going to be a 2-story building, moving it back that whatever they said, 35 feet. It's significant to us for our privacy.
Thank you. Is any other member of the public here to speak on this item? All right, so I think we're going to hold this hearing open for the next meeting and consider it at the next meeting in January. Yeah, let's take a motion to adjourn it for tonight's meeting. Motion by Member Phillips, second by Member Schubert. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. That item is adjourned for tonight. Now we're going to go back to the top of the agenda for 9100 Transit Road. Will the applicant please come to the microphone? Please write your name and address on the sheet on the podium if you have not already. If not, please go ahead.
Thank you. Good evening. Robert Bergdorf for the law firm Nixon Peabody here tonight on behalf of Verizon Wireless. This is an application for a 139-foot telecommunications monopole at 9100 Transit Road on a 100 by 100-foot parcel, leased from property behind the fire district. I know the board's been through this before, so I don't want to take up more of your time than is necessary. I'm more than happy. We've submitted a pretty full package. Happy to talk about the limited flexibility, answer any questions on RF, location, and so forth. But first, there are two things I want to mention. First is need. We always like to put that in the record, of course. We're here because we have to fix a significant gap. This is all set forth in Exhibit D. And slide 1 shows it's basically those areas, those white spots you see. Yep, back please. Yep, this one. As well as some offload for capacity for the orange. And on page 3 of Exhibit D, The engineer on the last paragraph goes into some detail about the portions of the town that are receiving inadequate coverage, um, including the areas you saw before in the white on either side, capacity issues, the country club, both sides of 78. I'm happy to go through those line by line if you like, but they're all in the record. You can see the after picture, what this will do. It'll cover those areas where we have coverage issues, but it'll also help offload some capacity problems, becoming the dominant cell in that area and relieving some capacity issues with some of the surrounding cells. That's the need. The other issue I wanted to mention was landscape. We did receive a report from the town consultant about landscaping. We were perfectly comfortable with every one of the suggestions or recommendations that was in that report and would welcome a condition that would require us to landscape it pursuant to every recommendation in that report. Procedurally, this has to go to for County 239M review, which we understand was completed and that got cleared. And then it requires a special use permit from this board as well as 2 waivers. One is because we are within 500 feet of 5 residences. I think the closest one is we have to scale it off, but it's about 300. And the second one is because the fence is not at least 34.75 feet from the base of the tower. So we can look at the aerial to take a closer look at where those things are. But in order to get this on the fire department property, which is one of the preferred locations by the town municipal property, if we can't find a co-location opportunity, which we could not, and tucked into the corner, which is where the fire department wants it, again, away from the ball fields and so forth. So that's why we're asking for those 2 waivers. So with that, we're seeking a negative declaration pursuant to seeker, a special use permit from the ZBA, and waivers from those 2 requirements. So I know I covered a lot in a short period of time. Again, happy to go into any depth that the board would like. Again, we have a pretty fulsome application with a lot of materials there, and I didn't want to go over every item, and instead we'll direct my responses to questions the board has.
Thank you. Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant?
I have no questions, but I just wanted to say that I'll be recusing myself from this matter. Mr. Bergdorf and I are the same.
Understood. All right, is any member of the public here to speak on this item? Let's come to the microphone. Please state your name and address into the microphone, as well as make yours written down on the sheet at the podium.
Yeah, hi, my name is Spencer Murray. I'm the general manager and chief operating officer at Transit Valley Country Club. And the address of our location is 8920 Transit Road, East Amherst, New York, 14051. Is that all you needed? Yep. Okay. I just came honestly to offer my support for this proposal. It's been something that my membership community has been clamoring for, more service. They have 0 service on our course. And I know many of our members live in that particular neighborhood and areas, and constantly tell me that they don't have service. There's moments where I even try to call their cell phones while they're at home, and they can't get it. So again, nothing major, just wanted to offer my support that I think this will be a huge win for my business in the area and also for the homeowners in the respective space. So just wanted to offer support and hope this goes through.
Thank you. All right, is anyone else here to speak on this item? With that, we'll close the hearing. We have to do a negative declaration first. Is there a motion on the negative declaration? Second. That's a motion by member Phillips, second by member Schubert. All in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
That passes 4-0. And then there were 2 suggested conditions that were handed out earlier. I'll read those into the record. The first condition is amend the landscape plan consistent with the town's landscape architect review memorandum dated November 4th, 2024, and provide supplemental planting if necessary after a post-construction inspection by the town's landscape architect. And the second condition was applicant to use its best effort to accommodate any future communication needs the town may have to place town emergency communication antenna on the tower without rental charges, provided there is available space and available structural loading. Could I get a motion for approval with those two conditions?
I'll move to approve, inclusive of the waivers, the two waivers that were requested, and inclusive of two conditions.
There was a motion by Member Phillips. Do I have a second? A second by Member Schubert. All in favor? Aye.
Abstain.
That passes 4-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We're now on the next item on tonight's agenda, 1880 Eckerd Road for an area variance. Will the applicant please come to the podium? Please say your name and address into the microphone, and then start your presentation.
Good evening, zoning board. My name is Ron Trujillo. I'm an architect representing Eggertsville Fire District. And the fire district is in preparing to have a site plan and some building projects going on. So we're here to address some things that were brought up during our meetings with the planning department. One of them is that we're seeking relief on some plantings that are required at the front of the property. And then we're seeking also relief from having landscape islands in the parking lot. Now, for the first one, we believe that the trees will interrupt the sight line of the drivers as they're exiting the property, and think that's a dangerous situation. And also, due to the need for readiness, the parking lots are aggressively plowed and salted. So over the course of years, the firefighters have had trouble maintaining the plantings that were close to the parking lot in the front of the building and also on the landscape islands. So they're constantly replacing any of the plantings. As trees have that were on the street front have died, they chose not to bring them back again because of sightline concerns for the firefighters as they're exiting onto Eggerd Road. So for the variance 2, for the landscape islands, they did have them there originally, and it was just pretty much a pain for them to plow around them. And their biggest concern is readiness. The more time they spend plowing, salting, there's less time that they're taking care of other things that they need to do in regard to readiness for the district. That's basically the two items that they're looking for relief now, and we'll be working with the planners as we go forward, taking care of any other landscaping concerns or anything else that's lacking. So we'll be doing more work than this as we go forward.
All right, thank you. Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant?
Is this project going to be going to the planning board subsequent to this? Okay.
Yeah, we want to get this out of the way first, and then we're going to go to the planning board.
Is there any other questions? All right, is any member of the audience here to speak on this item? Now we'll close the public hearing. Is there a motion for approval? Motion by Member Gergen, second by Member Schubert. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
The next item on tonight's agenda is 291 North Hill Drive. Would the applicant please come to the podium?
Good evening. I'm Jeff Palumbo with the law firm of Block Longo. I'm here with Dave DiPaolo from Morano Homes in connection with the requested variance. The property you are all, I'm sure, familiar with, the villas at Windstone off of Main Street. Excuse my scribble, by the way, in the variance application. I apologize for the last minute filing. What we're here for is to ask for relief from the section of the code regarding buffering and adjacent to residential. Section 203-724B1 is not provided in our site plan because we have not put a fence, a wall, or a berm a minimum of 36 inches above grade as required in the ordinance. And the reason for that is that the area that you see here is a national fuel easement. And National Fuel has allowed us to put the landscaping in, and it is in. The homes, the villas are sold out. There's 48 units there, 6 in each of the 8 buildings, and the landscaping is in, but the berm is not. And there's no fence allowed, and there's no berm allowed. And we do have a letter that we can submit from National Grid that we just got, from National Fuel that we just received today, confirming the fact that no berm is allowed in the easement area. So we also have shown on the site plan that scribbled line there, adjacent to the property line next to where it says National Fuel Easement, and that is the existing tree line. And if you've been out there, you can see that the trees that were planted 20 years ago have grown sufficiently, and they're, for the most part, evergreen trees. So there's a substantial buffer that exists already in that area. And then with the additional landscaping that was approved by the town when this was originally approved, that is in as well. So it's very, very well screened from the adjacent property owners, which there are only 2 in that area. So with that, I would ask for the variance from the section 203 regarding the screening. And Mr. DiPaolo is here if you have any specific questions about the development itself.
Thank you. Does any member of the board have a question for the applicant? Or is any member in the audience here to speak on this item? With that, we'll close tonight's hearing on this item. Is there a motion for approval?
I move to approve.
Motion by member Schubert, second by member Phillips. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? That passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Have a good evening.
And the last item on tonight's agenda is 20 Flint Road. Will the applicant please come to the podium?
Good evening. My name is John Marcotte. I'm here on behalf of ChargeSmart EV. We are here requesting a variance for some EV charging stations at the Candlewood Suites. The zoning ordinance, it does require 50 feet. Our chargers and panel board would be approximately 9 from that east property line. We chose that location because it's the least disruptive to the site. No concrete work is necessary, anything like that. It's also a commercial area, so there's hotels to the south, east, and west. We will be screening each charger as well as our equipment on the site. Yeah, so we're requesting a variance for that. I will pause and just see if there's any questions.
What is the property closest, that will be closest to the chargers?
It's a hotel.
Next to the hotel, what is that you're asking to be a shorter distance from?
It's so the hotel to the west of the building, I believe it's, I think it's a Marriott. So there's a hotel to the west.
Mm-hmm.
There's the Candlewood Suites. Then there's a hotel to the right, the east, and then a hotel to the south. I don't know off the top of my head. I do know it's another hotel.
Okay, so it's just another very
Yes.
hotel.
Yeah.
Is any member of the board have a question for the applicant? All right, any member of the audience here to speak on this item? All right, we'll close the hearing then. Is there a motion for approval? Motion by member Parker. Is there a second? Second by member Gergen. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? All right, that passes 5-0.
Thank you. Have a good night.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, before you entertain a motion to dismiss, I just want to bring to everyone's attention a new program that our Community Development Office is implementing. It's an accessory dwelling unit pilot program, and I just want to hand out some literature for you.
Thank you.
The reason I'm bringing this to your attention is because the state of New York has awarded our community $2 million grant for us to implement an accessory dwelling unit program, which will require the grantees to appear before your board starting next January for a special use permit for their accessory dwelling unit. So we anticipate there may be as many as 12 grantees before you next year, starting with at least 2 in January. So I just wanted you to be apprised of the fact that we're trying to implement this pilot program through our community development office, and we're here to answer any of your questions, and we hope that you find that this will be a successful pilot program for us. Thank you.
That was 12 over the entire year, not 12 in January.
Correct. We believe you may get as many as 2 to 3 in January.
Okay, thank you. All right, and then we have the calendar for next year. Our next meeting will be held on January 14th. So thank you very much. Motion to adjourn the meeting?
So moved.
Motion by Kelly, second by
Second.
Member Gergen. All in favor? Aye. All right, passes 5-0. Thank you very much.